The bathroom tiles felt cold against her skin as she remembered their first kiss outside her apartment complex. How he'd traced her cheek with gentle fingers and whispered, "You're extraordinary, Denise. I've been waiting my whole life for someone real." When someone shows you who they really are, do you believe them the first time? Or do you wait for the second devastating blow? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She stood in her $15,000 wedding dress, mascara streaking down her cheeks, as her husband of 3 hours whispered another woman's name into his phone. What's worse than being left at the altar? Being married to a man who wishes you were someone else. Have you ever given your whole heart to someone who is still holding on to their past? This isn't just about heartbreak, it's about dignity. What would you do if your wedding night became your worst nightmare? The penthouse suite at the Four Seasons gleamed with champagne flutes and rose petals scattered across marble floors. Houston's downtown skyline stretched beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights twinkling like fallen stars. The fairy tale setting mocked the destruction happening inside. Denise pressed her back against the bathroom door, designer silk clinging to her trembling frame. Through the crack, she watched Robert pace the balcony, phone pressed to his ear with desperate intensity. "Laura, please pick up. I know it's late in California, but I need to hear your voice." The words hit her chest like physical blows. Laura, his ex-wife, the woman he'd sworn meant nothing anymore. "I went through with it," Robert continued, his voice cracking. "But standing at that altar, all I could think about was you. God, I wish you were here instead of." Denise's knees gave out. She slid down the bathroom door, wedding dress pooling around her like spilled cream. 3 hours ago, she'd walked down the aisle believing she was finally getting her fairy tale. After years of night shifts at Houston Methodist, raising her son Marcus alone, scraping together every dollar just to survive, Robert had seemed like a miracle. They'd met at that charity fundraiser in Dallas 6 months ago. She'd been working the event, serving champagne to wealthy donors who barely noticed her existence. But Robert noticed. He asked about her story, listened when she talked about growing up in Atlanta, losing her nursing job during hospital cuts, moving to Texas with nothing but hope and a toddler. He'd made her feel seen, valuable, like she mattered beyond her ability to work double shifts and sacrifice everything for everyone else. The bathroom tiles felt cold against her skin as she remembered their first kiss outside her apartment complex. How he traced her cheek with gentle fingers and whispered, "You're extraordinary, Denise. I've been waiting my whole life for someone real." Now those same fingers gripped his phone, begging another woman to acknowledge his existence. "I made a mistake, Laura. A huge mistake. I married her thinking it would help me forget you, but it only made everything worse." The words shattered something inside Denise's chest. Not just her heart, her entire sense of self. She wasn't a wife. She was a rebound, a placeholder, a consolation prize. Robert's reflection appeared in the balcony glass as he turned toward the suite. Denise scrambled to her feet, pressing her ear to the door. "The prenup protects everything," he continued. "Your family's investments, the California properties, the offshore accounts. She doesn't know about any of it. She signed everything without reading the fine print." Heat flooded Denise's face. The prenup she'd signed because she trusted him, because she believed their love was real, not transactional. "I can fix this, Laura. I can make this right. Just tell me there's still a chance for us." Silence stretched across the line. Then Robert's voice broke completely. "I love you. I've never stopped loving you. This marriage, it's just paperwork. You're the one I want to grow old with." Denise gripped the marble countertop until her knuckles went white. In the mirror, she saw what she'd become. A woman in an expensive dress bought with lies, standing in a suite paid for with deception, married to a man who'd used her signature to protect another woman's assets. The rage that filled her chest felt cleaner than tears, sharper than heartbreak. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to beg. She wasn't going to accept this humiliation with quiet dignity like she'd accepted every other disappointment in her life. Robert ended his call and stepped back inside, finding her standing in the bathroom doorway. His eyes went wide, caught. Denise, I can explain. Don't. Her voice came out steady, controlled. Don't insult me with explanations. She walked to the bed, grabbed her purse, and pulled out her phone. Robert watched, confusion replacing guilt on his face. What are you doing? Booking a flight. A flight where? Denise's fingers moved across the screen with mechanical precision. George Bush Intercontinental Airport. Next available departure. Anywhere but here. Away from you. London. British Airways. Red-eye departure in 3 hours. You can't just leave. We're married now. We have obligations, contracts. Contracts. Denise looked up from her phone, wedding ring catching the suite's crystal lighting. Is that what this was to you? A business deal? Robert's silence answered everything. She slipped the diamond band from her finger, 3 carats that felt heavier than chains. The ring landed on his pillow with a soft thud that echoed like a gunshot. Tell Laura, I said congratulations. Looks like she got her man back without having to lift a finger. As Robert stepped onto the balcony to continue his call, Denise made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to beg. She was going to disappear. But first, she was going to find out exactly what kind of man she'd married, and exactly what kind of contract she'd unknowingly signed. By dawn, the bride had vanished, leaving only her wedding ring on the pillow and a boarding pass to London in her wake. When someone shows you who they really are, do you believe them the first time? Or do you wait for the second devastating blow? Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is run before they get the chance to destroy you completely. George Bush Intercontinental Airport hummed with red-eye departures, travelers rushing toward new destinations with rolling suitcases and coffee cups. But none carried the weight of a woman fleeing her own life. Denise moved through Terminal E like a ghost in designer clothes. The wedding dress had been replaced with jeans and a sweater from her overnight bag, but she still felt like she was wearing a costume. The wife who'd existed for exactly 7 hours and 32 minutes. Her phone buzzed constantly, Robert's name flashing across the screen every few minutes. She'd stopped reading the messages after the 15th one. They all said the same thing anyway, variations of "we need to talk" and "don't do anything rash." Too late for that advice. The gate area for British Airways 196 was half empty. Business travelers typing on laptops, a few families with sleepy children, couples heading to European vacations. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the woman in seat 14A was running from a marriage that had lasted shorter than most movies. Denise closed her eyes and let herself remember the good parts, because there had been good parts which somehow made everything worse. Robert showing up at her apartment with groceries when she'd mentioned struggling to pay for both rent and Marcus's daycare. The way he'd gotten down on the floor to build Lego towers with her 3-year-old son, his expensive suit forgotten. How he'd held her after her double shifts at the hospital, fingers tracing gentle patterns on her back while she told him about losing patience, saving others, the weight of holding people's lives in her hands. Their first night together had been everything she'd dreamed intimacy could be. Slow, reverent, like he was memorizing every inch of her skin. He'd whispered her name like a prayer, made her feel beautiful in ways she'd forgotten were possible. "You're perfect," he'd breathed against her collarbone. "Everything about you is perfect." She believed him. God help her. She believed every word. The boarding announcement crackled through the gate speakers. Denise gathered her carry-on, checking her passport one more time. Denise Williams. Not Denise Matthews. She'd never had the chance to change her name officially. Thank God for small mercies. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Robert. "Mama, where are you? Robert came by looking for you. He seems upset." Her mother's text made Denise's chest tight. She dropped Marcus off at her mom's house in Atlanta yesterday morning, planning to pick him up after the honeymoon. Now she was flying to London with no return date and no explanation for her son. She typed back quickly. "Emergency trip for work. Kiss my baby for me. We'll call soon." The lie tasted bitter, but the truth was too complicated for text messages. How do you explain that your wedding night revealed your marriage was built on deception? That the man you trusted with your future was still in love with his past? First-class passengers, welcome aboard. Denise looked at her boarding pass. Economy, middle seat. She'd booked the cheapest available option, using the credit card Robert had given her for emergencies. If this didn't qualify as an emergency, nothing would. She settled into 14A, stuffing her purse under the seat in front of her. The airplane was filling up quickly, passengers stowing overhead bags and claiming armrests. Denise stared out the small window at the Houston skyline, wondering if she'd ever see it again. Part of her hoped not. The woman in 14B arrived just before takeoff, sliding past Denise with apologetic smiles. Mid-50s, expensively dressed, the kind of effortless elegance that spoke of old money and European education. Long night? The woman asked, noticing Denise's red-rimmed eyes. You could say that. I'm Helena. She extended a manicured hand. And you look like someone who could use a friend. Something in Helena's voice made Denise look up. Kind eyes, but sharp intelligence behind them. The recognition of one woman who'd been hurt seeing it in another. Denise. The handshake was firm, grounding. And yes, I could definitely use a friend. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Helena leaned closer. Let me guess. Man trouble. Denise almost laughed. Is it that obvious? Honey, I've been flying international routes for 20 years. I can spot a woman running from heartbreak at 30,000 feet. The engines roared to life, pressing them back into their seats as Houston fell away below. Denise watched the city lights shrink to pinpricks, then disappear entirely as they climbed into darkness. Want to talk about it? Helena's voice was gentle but curious. Denise turned toward her seatmate, something about Helena's presence making her feel less alone for the first time in hours. My husband is in love with someone else. Helena nodded knowingly. The ex-wife. Denise's eyes widened. How did you? Lucky guess. What's her name? Laura. Helena's expression changed instantly. The kindness remained, but something sharper entered her eyes. Something that looked like recognition. Laura what? I don't know her last name. Robert never talked about her much, just that they divorced a few years ago. Helena was quiet for a long moment, studying Denise's face with new intensity. What's your husband's full name? Robert Matthews. He's in real estate development, based in Houston, but has properties in California and Florida. The color drained from Helena's face. Oh, honey. Her voice was barely a whisper. We need to talk. Seat 14A held more than just another passenger. It held the woman who would reveal Robert's darkest secrets. And she was already talking. Sometimes the truth comes from a most unexpected source. A stranger on a transatlantic flight who knows your husband better than you do. What's worse, being married for love that isn't real, or discovering you were married for money you never knew existed? Have you ever had your entire life story rewritten by someone you just met? Stay with me, because what Helena revealed next will change everything you think you know about love and deception. 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, cabin lights dimmed to simulate night, but sleep was impossible. Truth had a way of keeping you awake, especially when it arrived wearing Helena's face and speaking in measured, careful tones. I worked with Laura's family for 15 years, Helena began, her voice low enough that other passengers couldn't hear. Investment management, primarily European properties and offshore holdings. Denise's stomach dropped. Worked with them how? The Sinclair family has been my client since 1995. Laura Sinclair, now Laura Matthews again, apparently, comes from serious money. We're talking generational wealth. Oil, real estate, tech investments. But Robert said she was. Denise stopped herself. What had Robert said about Laura? That the divorce was amicable. That she'd moved to California for a fresh start. That she wasn't part of his business dealings anymore. All lies, apparently. Helena pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like financial documents. Laura never divorced Robert legally in California. The papers he showed you were fake. The airplane cabins seemed to tilt, though they were flying straight and level. That's impossible. I saw the divorce decree. Forged. Very well done, but forged. Helena's fingers moved across her screen. I handle the Sinclair family's European accounts. Laura has been funneling money through Robert's companies for 3 years, using them to hide assets from federal tax investigators. Denise felt like she might throw up. Hide assets how? Fake business partnerships. Shell corporations. Your marriage was the final piece of the puzzle. I don't understand. Helena turned her phone toward Denise, showing what looked like a corporate filing. By marrying you, Robert gained spousal privilege protection. Even if the government finds the hidden money, you can't be forced to testify against him. And if they seize his assets, everything automatically transfers to you as his legal wife, then gets moved back to Laura through the prenup you signed. The words hit Denise like physical blows. The prenup wasn't protecting Robert from you. It was protecting Laura's money from the government, using you as an unwitting accomplice. Denise gripped the armrest until her knuckles went white. Every conversation with Robert played back in her mind with new meaning. His insistence that she sign the prenup quickly. His reluctance to talk about his ex-wife. The way he'd push for a fast wedding, claiming he couldn't wait to make her his wife. How much money are we talking about? Helena's pause was answer enough. Conservatively? $60 million. The cabin air felt too thin. Denise couldn't catch her breath. And I'm the unwitting front person for an international money laundering operation, yes. Other passengers slept peacefully around them while Denise's world crumbled for the second time in 12 hours. She'd thought the worst betrayal was Robert loving someone else. She'd had no idea the betrayal went so much deeper. There's more, Helena said gently. More. You're not the first woman Robert has married for this purpose. Denise's blood turned to ice. What do you mean? Maria Santos in Miami, 2015. Divorced after 8 months when she started asking too many questions about his business trips. Jennifer Walsh in Phoenix, 2018. Died in a car accident 6 months after their wedding, right before she was scheduled to meet with a federal investigator. The airplane cabin started spinning. You think he killed her? I think Robert Matthews is a very dangerous man who's been using vulnerable women to protect Laura Sinclair's fortune. And now you're the latest victim. Helena's hand covered Denise's, warm and steady. But you're also the first one who got away before he could finish using you. Denise stared at the window, seeing her reflection overlaid with clouds and darkness. 24 hours ago, she'd been a single mother struggling to make ends meet. This morning, she'd thought she was a betrayed wife. Now she was discovering she was an unwitting criminal. What do I do? Helena squeezed her hand. First, we get you somewhere safe. I have a flat in London. You can stay as long as you need. Second, we document everything you know about Robert's business dealings. I don't know anything about his business. You know more than you think. Bank account numbers, phone calls, meetings, travel patterns. Everything matters now. Denise closed her eyes, trying to process the magnitude of Helena's revelation. Why are you helping me? Helena was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried old pain. Because Laura Sinclair destroyed my daughter's life 10 years ago. Cost her everything she'd worked for. Left her broken and desperate. Her grip tightened on Denise's hand. I've been waiting for the chance to return the favor. The captain's voice crackled through the intercom, announcing their descent into London. Dawn was breaking outside the windows, painting clouds in shades of rose and gold. Denise felt something shifting inside her chest. Not just heartbreak anymore, but something harder, sharper. Helena. Yes, dear. When Helena handed her the documents proving Robert's deception, Denise realized this wasn't just about a broken heart. This was war. She landed in London with nothing but designer luggage and a hunger for revenge that surprised even her. Have you ever felt more powerful after someone tried to break you? Tell me about a time betrayal made you stronger, because what happened to Denise next shows how sometimes our worst moments become our greatest transformations. London rain painted the windows of the Georgian townhouse in Kensington, each drop like tears she refused to shed. The city welcomed broken hearts and ambitious plans equally, wrapping them both in gray skies and ancient stones that had seen centuries of human drama. Helena's flat was everything Denise's Houston apartment wasn't. High ceilings, Persian rugs, walls lined with books that looked actually read rather than decorative. Old money whispered from every carefully chosen piece, the kind of understated elegance that never had to announce itself. "Make yourself at home," Helena said, leading her to a guest room overlooking a private garden. "We'll talk strategy once you've slept." But sleep felt impossible. Denise stood at the tall windows, watching London wake up 6 hours ahead of Houston. Somewhere across the Atlantic, Robert was probably discovering her absence, maybe even calling the police to report his missing wife. Let him. She wasn't missing. She was exactly where she needed to be. The hot shower felt like washing off more than just travel exhaustion. She watched Houston wash down the drain, the hospital shifts, the financial stress, the constant worry about making ends meet. The woman who'd accepted Robert's proposal because she was tired of struggling, that woman was gone. The guest room mirror showed someone different. Same face, same body, but something fundamental had shifted behind her eyes. The desperation was gone, replaced by something that looked almost dangerous. Her phone buzzed with another call from Robert. This time, she answered. "Where are you?" His voice was tight with panic and something else. "Fear. Somewhere you can't find me." "Denise, we need to talk. I can explain everything." "Can you explain Maria Santos?" Silence stretched across the Atlantic. "Can you explain Jennifer Walsh?" "I don't know what lies someone has been telling you." "Can you explain why you never actually divorced Laura?" The silence went on so long she thought the call had dropped. "Come home," Robert finally said, his voice different now. Harder. "Come home, and we'll discuss this rationally." "I am home," Denise said, surprised by how true it felt. "For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I belong." She ended the call and turned off the phone. Helena found her in the kitchen an hour later, making coffee with the kind of focus that came from having nowhere else to put her energy. "How are you feeling?" "Angry," Denise said without hesitation. "Really, really angry." "Good. Anger is useful. Heartbreak makes you weak, but rage makes you sharp." Helena spread documents across the kitchen table, financial records, incorporation papers, travel logs. The paper trail of Robert's deception laid out in black and white. "I've been building a case against Laura and Robert for years," Helena explained. "But I needed someone on the inside, someone who could access Robert's current operations." Denise studied the documents, recognizing bank account numbers from papers she'd signed without reading. "You're using me. I'm offering you a partnership." The distinction mattered. Helena wasn't trying to rescue her or manage her decisions. She was treating her like an equal with something valuable to contribute. "What do you get out of this?" "Justice for my daughter. Revenge against Laura Sinclair. And the satisfaction of watching Robert Matthews go to prison." "What do I get?" Helena smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "Your life back, plus a substantial reward from several federal agencies who would very much like to get their hands on the Sinclair family assets." Denise walked to the window, looking out at the London street. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that across the ocean, a man was probably calling lawyers and private investigators, trying to locate a wife who'd become inconveniently knowledgeable about his crimes. "He'll come after me," she said. "Yes, he will. He might try to hurt me. Almost certainly." Denise turned back to Helena. "Good. Let him try." Something flickered across Helena's face. Approval mixed with concern. "You're not the same woman who got on that plane." "No, I'm not." Denise sat back down at the table, pulling the financial documents toward her. That woman was scared and broke and willing to accept whatever scraps of love someone threw her way. She looked up at Helena, holding her gaze steady. This woman is going to burn his whole world down. The guest room that night felt different than any bedroom she'd ever slept in. Not because of the luxury, but because for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. Not of Robert, not of the future, not of being alone. She was dangerous now, and she was just getting started. The call from Robert's lawyer came at midnight London time. He wasn't just looking for his wife. He was accusing her of theft. Apparently, leaving your cheating husband makes you a criminal, at least according to his team of lawyers. When powerful people try to silence you with lawsuits, what's your first move? Fight back or lay low? What Denise chose to do next will shock you, because sometimes the best defense is a calculated attack. The law office in Lincoln's Inn felt ancient and intimidating, wood-paneled walls holding centuries of legal battles between people with too much money and too many secrets. But Denise wasn't intimidated. She was inspired by the thought of adding her own victory to these walls. James Morrison looked exactly like what Helena had promised. Sharp suit, sharper mind, and the kind of confidence that came from winning cases everyone else thought were impossible. He was younger than Denise had expected, maybe 35, with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Matthews," he said, standing as Helena led her into his office. "I've reviewed the documents Helena provided. We have an interesting situation." "Interesting how?" James gestured for her to sit, his movements precise and economic. Everything about him suggested a man who didn't waste time or words. "Your husband is claiming you stole proprietary business documents and fled the country to avoid prosecution. He's demanding immediate extradition." Denise felt the familiar flutter of panic, then pushed it down. The woman who'd gotten on that plane might have been scared. This woman was curious about strategy. "Can he do that?" "He can try. But here's where it gets fascinating." James opened a file, spreading papers across his desk. "The documents you allegedly stole don't actually exist in his company's official records." Helena leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means Robert is essentially admitting to keeping illegal financial records by claiming Denise stole them. He's trying to prosecute her for taking evidence of his own crimes." A smile tugged at the corner of Denise's mouth. "So he's trapped himself. Beautifully trapped." James's answering smile was predatory. "But it gets better. I pulled your marriage certificate this morning." He slid a document across the desk. Official, stamped, legal, and completely damning. "The license shows Robert was already married when he wed you. Under Texas law, that makes your marriage void and Robert guilty of bigamy, a felony carrying up to 10 years in prison." The room went quiet except for London traffic outside the tall windows. Denise stared at the marriage certificate that had supposedly made her Robert's wife, now revealed as evidence of his crime. "He's really still married to Laura? Never divorced? The California papers he showed you were expertly forged, but forgeries nonetheless." James pulled out another file. "I have contacts in the Los Angeles County Clerk's office. No divorce decree was ever filed." Denise felt something sharp and satisfied unfold in her chest. "So, when he married me, he committed a federal crime. And when he moved money through your joint accounts." James's smile widened. "He made you an unwitting accomplice in money laundering, which gives you immunity in exchange for testimony." Helena reached over and squeezed Denise's hand. "You're not the criminal, dear. You're the star witness." The realization hit her like sunshine breaking through clouds. She wasn't running from justice. She was the key to it. Every document she'd signed, every bank account she'd been added to, every conversation she'd overheard was evidence in a federal case that could destroy Robert and Laura both. "What happens next?" she asked. James leaned back in his chair, studying her with new interest. "That depends on what you want to happen. We can keep you safe here while building the case quietly, or we can make some noise. Force Robert to make mistakes while he's panicking about what you know." The thought of Robert panicking, of him losing sleep the way she had, sent a thrill through her that she didn't entirely recognize. When had she become someone who found satisfaction in another person's fear? Maybe when that person had tried to destroy her life for money. "I want to make noise," she said. Helena and James exchanged a look. "That's more dangerous," Helena warned. "Good." Denise stood, walking to the window, overlooking the courtyard. "I spent my whole life playing it safe, working extra shifts instead of demanding better pay, accepting whatever men offered instead of asking for what I deserved, staying quiet instead of making waves." She turned back to face them. "Look where playing it safe got me. Married to a criminal, used as a money laundering front, nearly destroyed by someone who saw me as disposable." James was watching her with something that looked like admiration. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I want to go public. Tell my story. Let Robert and Laura know that I'm not hiding. I'm not scared, and I know everything." "The media attention will be intense," James warned. "Your privacy will be gone. Robert will escalate his efforts to discredit you." "Let him try." Denise sat back down, meeting James's gaze steadily. I'm not the same woman who signed those papers without reading them. I'm not the victim he thought he married. Helena was smiling now, the same sharp expression she'd worn on the airplane. What do you need from us? Legal protection, media strategy, and a way to make sure that when this is over, Robert Matthews spends the next decade in federal prison. James opened his laptop, fingers already moving across the keys. I know a journalist at The Guardian. Specializes in international financial crime. She'd love this story. How long before Robert knows we're coming for him? 24 hours after the story breaks, maybe less. Denise nodded, feeling something fierce and determined settle in her chest. Perfect. Let's give him something to really panic about. As the meeting ended and they walked out into London's gray afternoon, Helena touched her arm. Are you sure about this? Once we go public, there's no turning back. Denise looked up at the ancient buildings surrounding them, thinking about all the battles that had been fought in this city, all the people who'd stood up to power and won. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. James's investigation uncovered something Robert never expected her to find, proof that the marriage itself was fraudulent. But that was just the beginning. What they discovered next would make headlines around the world. Every lie Robert told her had been carefully calculated, except for the one mistake that would destroy him. What would you do with evidence that could destroy someone who destroyed you? Is revenge justice, or just more pain? What Denise discovered in those London archives will make you question everything you think you know about the people you trust most. The archives beneath the London courthouse smelled of old paper and older secrets. Each file folder Denise opened revealed another layer of Robert's deception, like peeling back skin to find right underneath. James sat across from her at the metal table, laptop open, legal documents spread between them like evidence at a crime scene. 3 days of digging had produced a mountain of proof that Robert Matthews wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a career criminal who'd been operating for years. Look at this, James said, sliding another printout toward her. Bank transfers from Robert's Houston accounts to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. 47 separate transactions in the past 18 months. Denise traced the numbers with her finger, recognizing the account numbers she'd signed paperwork for during their whirlwind courtship. He had me sign forms for these accounts. Said they were for business expenses. Business expenses of $12 million. The number hit her like a physical blow. $12 million had flowed through accounts with her name on them, making her legally responsible for money she'd never seen, never spent, never even known existed. How is this possible? James pulled up another document on his laptop screen. Your signatures gave Robert power of attorney over these accounts during your marriage. Every transaction technically had your authorization. Heat flooded Denise's face. I authorized money laundering? Unknowingly. But that's what makes you valuable to federal prosecutors. You can testify about how he manipulated you into signing documents you didn't understand. Helena entered the archive room carrying coffee and what looked like more bad news. I just got off the phone with my contact at Interpol. They've been watching the Sinclair family for 2 years. Watching them for what? Tax evasion, primarily, but also connections to Eastern European oligarchs who've been moving dirty money through London property investments. Helena sat down, her expression grim. Robert's been their front man for transactions they couldn't make directly. Denise felt the room tilt slightly. So I wasn't just married to a bigamist. I was married to an international criminal. Gets better, James said, typing rapidly. I pulled Robert's travel records. He's made 14 trips to Switzerland in the past year, always for less than 48 hours. Classic money courier behavior. The coffee Helena brought tasted bitter, but Denise drank it anyway, needing the caffeine to process the magnitude of what they were uncovering. Her phone buzzed with another call from Robert. She'd stopped answering days ago, but the messages kept coming. James gestured toward her phone. What's he saying now? Same thing. That I'm making a mistake. That if I come home, we can work this out. That he loves me. She looked up from the screen. Think he means any of it? I think Robert Matthews says whatever he needs to say to get what he wants. And right now, he wants you back in Houston where he can control the situation. Helena leaned across the table. There's something else. I've been in contact with Maria Santos, Robert's first wife in Miami. Denise's blood chilled. She's alive, very much alive, and very interested in talking to you. I thought she died in a car accident. That was Jennifer Walsh, wife number 2. Maria divorced Robert and disappeared, changed her name, moved to Costa Rica. But she's been following his activities ever since. The archive room felt too small suddenly, walls pressing in as the scope of Robert's crimes expanded beyond anything Denise had imagined. She wasn't just his latest victim, she was part of a pattern that stretched back years. How many women has he done this to? James and Helena exchanged a look. That we know of, for including you, but there might be others. Denise stood abruptly, pacing to the small window that looked out on a London street. Normal people walking normal lives, unaware that in a basement archive room, a woman was discovering she'd married a monster. Maria wants to meet, Helena continued. She has documents, recordings, evidence that could put Robert away for decades. What kind of recordings? Phone calls where Robert discusses using wives as fronts for money laundering. Conversations with Laura about which women would be easiest to manipulate. Strategy sessions about how to make marriages look legitimate while keeping all real assets protected. The window glass felt cold against Denise's forehead. He recorded himself planning crimes. Apparently Robert's very thorough about documentation, probably for insurance purposes, in case Laura ever tried to betray him. James's fingers stilled on his keyboard. Maria's flying in from San Jose tomorrow. She wants to coordinate testimony with you. Something shifted in Denise's chest, hard and determined. She wasn't alone in this. Robert had created his own army of victims, and now they were joining forces against him. What does she want from me? Cooperation. Your signature on the accounts gives prosecutors leverage they didn't have with her case. Her evidence plus your testimony could trigger a federal investigation that brings down not just Robert, but the entire network. Denise turned back to face them. The entire network, meaning Laura and her family? The Sinclairs, their European partners, possibly connections to organized crime in 3 countries. Helena's smile was sharp. This could be the biggest financial crime takedown in a decade. The weight of it settled on Denise's shoulders. Not the burden of responsibility, but the thrill of possibility. She could be part of something bigger than her own revenge. Something that stopped Robert from destroying more women, that brought justice for Jennifer Walsh, that made the powerful people face consequences for once. When do I meet Maria? Tomorrow afternoon. But Denise, James's voice carried a warning. Once you meet with her, once you officially cooperate with federal investigators, Robert will know. His legal team will escalate everything. They'll try to discredit you, maybe even try to have you arrested. Let them try. The words came out steady, sure. I'm tired of being afraid of men who think women are disposable. Helena reached across the table and squeezed her hand. There's one more thing you should know before you decide. What? Robert's in London. The archive room went silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and Denise's suddenly rapid heartbeat. He's here. Landed at Heathrow this morning. Maria's not the only one who wants to meet with you face to face. Denise felt something cold and sharp settle in her stomach. Fear, but also excitement. Let him come. She wasn't the same woman who'd run from his hotel suite in tears. Good, she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. It's time we had a real conversation. James closed his laptop with a sharp click. Are you sure about this? Denise looked around the archive room, at the evidence of Robert's crimes spread across the table, at Helena and James who'd become her allies in seeking justice, at her own reflection in the small window. Stronger than she'd ever been. I've never been more sure of anything. The certified mail from Texas arrived with news that changed everything. Robert was already remarrying. To Laura. While she fought for justice in London, he was exchanging vows again in Malibu, proving some men collect wives like business assets. Have you ever wanted to expose someone's lies to the world? What stopped you? Or what made you do it? What Robert did next will make your blood boil, because apparently destroying one woman's life wasn't enough for him. The gossip magazines arrived at Helena's doorstep like poison pen letters. Robert and Laura's Malibu, Wedding splashed across glossy pages that mocked everything Denise had believed about her marriage. People magazine, Us Weekly, Hello, all featuring the same story. Texas billionaire Robert Matthews remarries former wife in intimate ceremony. Denise stared at the photos spread across Helena's kitchen table. Robert in a designer tuxedo, looking relaxed and happy. Laura in flowing white, gorgeous and glowing like a woman who'd finally gotten everything she wanted. The Malibu beach house in the background, waves crashing against rocks. Sunset painting everything in golden romance. The same man who'd whispered Laura's name on their wedding night was now holding Laura's hand at their second wedding. Which made Denise, what exactly? A practice round? Intimate ceremony, she read aloud from the article. Attended by close friends and family members who supported the couple through their brief separation. Brief separation, not divorce, not the end of their marriage to pursue other relationships. A separation, like Denise, had been nothing more than a temporary distraction. James sat across from her, laptop open, face grim as he scrolled through legal databases. This complicates things. Ow! If Robert and Laura remarried while he was still technically married to you, they've both committed federal crimes. But it also means they're closing ranks, combining their legal defenses. Helena poured coffee with hands that shook slightly with anger. Look at this quote from Laura. Robert and I realized we were meant to be together. Sometimes you have to go through challenges to appreciate what you have. Challenges. Denise was a challenge they'd overcome together, a bump in the road of their great love story. There's more, James said, turning his laptop toward them. I've been monitoring Robert's business filings. He transferred all his Texas assets to Laura's name yesterday. Officially, he's now worth about $50,000. $50,000? Denise looked up from the magazines. What happened to the millions? On paper, Laura owns it all now. In reality, they've just made it much harder for prosecutors to freeze assets during a federal investigation. The kitchen felt too small, too warm. Denise walked to the window, looking out at Helena's garden where roses bloomed despite the London drizzle. Beautiful things growing in difficult conditions. She felt a kinship with those flowers. He's covering his tracks, she said, very efficiently. Robert's smarter than we gave him credit for. James pulled up another screen. But there's good news, too. What good news? Maria Santos landed an hour ago. She's on her way here with a lawyer and 3 boxes of evidence. And she's not the only one. Helena looked up sharply. What do you mean? I've been contacted by attorneys representing 2 other women, wives of Robert's business associates who think they might have been used in similar schemes. Something electric went through Denise's chest. How many women are we talking about? Potentially dozens. This is bigger than just Robert and Laura. They've been running the same con through multiple states, using different men as front husbands, but always funneling money back to Sinclair family accounts. The doorbell rang, cutting through their conversation. Helena went to answer it, returning moments later with a woman who looked like she'd walked through fire and come out stronger. Maria Santos was petite, dark-haired, maybe 45, with the kind of alert eyes that missed nothing. She moved like someone always ready to run or fight, whichever the situation required. You must be Denise, she said, extending her hand. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I'm glad we're meeting at all. I thought I was the only one, Denise admitted. That's what they count on. Shame, isolation, the feeling that you're stupid for falling for it. Maria's smile was grim. But we're not stupid. We're survivors. Maria's lawyer, a sharp-featured woman named Carmen Rodriguez, began spreading documents across the kitchen table. Bank statements, recorded phone calls, photographs of Robert with various women. This is what we've been building for 3 years, Carmen explained. A federal case against Robert Matthews, Laura Sinclair Matthews, and the entire Sinclair family financial network. 3 years. Denise stared at the evidence. You've been working on this for 3 years. Ever since Maria came forward, Carmen nodded. But we needed someone on the inside of Robert's current operations. Someone who could provide recent evidence. Maria leaned forward. Someone like you. The weight of it settled on Denise again, but this time it felt different. Not burden, but purpose. She wasn't just seeking revenge anymore. She was part of something that could protect other women from what she'd experienced. "What do you need from me?" Carmen pulled out a recording device. "Everything. Every conversation, every document you signed, every detail about how Robert manipulated you into trusting him. And then we go to the FBI. The evidence you provide, combined with what we already have, should be enough for federal prosecutors to file charges within weeks." James had been quiet, studying the documents Carmen brought. Now he looked up, expression troubled. "There's something else you should know. About Jennifer Walsh." The room went silent. "The woman who died in the car accident." "It wasn't an accident," Maria said quietly. "Jennifer called me 2 weeks before she died. She'd figured out what Robert was doing, threatened to go to the police." Cold dread filled Denise's stomach. "You think Robert killed her?" "I think Jennifer Walsh got too close to the truth, and powerful people decided she was expendable." Helena's coffee cup rattled against its saucer as she set it down. "Are you saying Denise is in danger?" Carmen and Maria exchanged a look. "We're saying Denise needs to be very careful," Carmen replied. "But we're also saying she's not alone anymore." Denise looked around the kitchen at the women who'd become her allies. Helena seeking justice for her daughter. Maria seeking justice for herself. Carmen seeking justice for all the women Robert had used and discarded. "When do we start?" Carmen smiled, and it was fierce. "We already have." She pulled out her phone, showing a news alert. Federal investigation launched into international money laundering scheme involving Texas real estate developer. The story breaks in tomorrow's newspapers. Robert will know by morning that his world is about to collapse. Denise felt something powerful surge through her chest. Not revenge anymore, but justice. For Jennifer Walsh, for Maria Santos, for every woman who'd been seen as disposable by men with money and power. What happens when Robert reads that story? "He'll panic," Maria said with satisfaction. "And panicked men make mistakes." James comforting Denise. First kiss born from anger and attraction. Passionate encounter as emotional release. As the evening wound down and the lawyers departed, James lingered in the kitchen, helping clean up the scattered evidence that would soon bring down Robert's empire. "How are you feeling about all this?" he asked, drying dishes while Denise washed. Terrified, she admitted, but also alive. "For the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." James set down the towel, turning to face her fully. "You know this is going to get much worse before it gets better." "I know. Robert will try everything to discredit you. The media attention will be brutal. You'll have no privacy, no peace until this is over." Denise met his eyes, seeing concern there, but also something deeper. Admiration, attraction, the recognition of one fighter seeing another. "Are you trying to scare me away from this?" "I'm trying to make sure you know what you're getting into." She stepped closer, drawn by his honesty, his steady presence during the chaos of the past week. "And if I know and I still want to do it, then I'll be right there with you." The kiss happened without planning, born from adrenaline and attraction and the intoxicating rush of standing up to powerful people. James tasted like coffee and determination, his hands gentle but sure as they framed her face. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Denise felt something shift inside her chest. Not the desperate gratitude she'd felt for Robert's attention, but something cleaner, stronger. "This is complicated," James murmured against her forehead. "Everything in my life is complicated right now. I'm your lawyer. You're also the first man who's ever seen me as an equal partner instead of someone who needs rescuing." James pulled back to look at her, something intense flickering in his dark eyes. "Is that what you want?" "Partnership, it's all I've ever wanted." This time when he kissed her, it was deeper, hungrier, hands tangling in her hair as weeks of professional restraint gave way to personal need. Denise lost herself in the sensation of being wanted for her strength rather than her vulnerability, desired for her courage rather than her compliance. They made it as far as the living room couch before clothes started disappearing, months of tension and attraction finally finding expression in desperate touches and whispered encouragement. James treated her body like something precious but powerful, Every caress asking permission, every kiss a question she answered with increasing boldness. "Is this okay?" he whispered against her throat. "More than okay," she breathed, surprised by how much she meant it. Afterward, lying tangled together on Helena's Persian rug, Denise felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. Not the exhausted collapse after survival, but the deep satisfaction of being exactly where she belonged. "What happens now?" James asked, fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Now we destroy Robert Matthews and everyone who helped him." James laughed, the sound vibrating through his chest. "I meant what happens with us." Denise propped herself up on her elbow, studying his face in the lamplight. Honest features, kind eyes, the face of a man who'd chosen to fight for justice, even when it was difficult. "That depends on whether you're ready to be with a woman who's about to become very publicly dangerous. I've been ready since the moment you walked into my office and decided to fight back instead of hide." When Denise found Laura's private Instagram account, she discovered the remarriage had a timeline problem, one that made Robert a bigamist. But Robert's crimes were about to become the least of his problems. Because tomorrow, the world would know exactly what kind of man he really was. Turns out her husband was more criminal than she thought, because you can't marry two women in two different states within 72 hours. When you discover your marriage was never legal, is that liberation or another betrayal? What would you feel first, relief or rage? What the county clerk's office revealed next will make you question everything you think you know about the legal system. The Houston County Clerk's office appeared on James's laptop screen via video call, bureaucratic fluorescence that now held the key to Robert's downfall. The clerk, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, shuffled through papers with the slow precision of someone who'd processed thousands of marriages and divorces. "Let me get this straight," Patricia said, adjusting her glasses. "You want me to verify the marriage dates for Robert Matthews?" "That's correct," James replied, his lawyer voice crisp and professional. "We need official confirmation of all marriage licenses issued to Robert Matthews in Texas." Denise sat beside James at Helena's kitchen table, watching Patricia type with 2 fingers. Outside, London rain streaked the windows, but inside, everything felt crystal clear for the first time in weeks. "Okay, here we go." Patricia peered at her computer screen. "Robert James Matthews, age 41, married to—" She paused, frowning. "This is odd." "What's odd?" "According to our records, Mr. Matthews has been married twice in the past 6 months. Once to a Denise Williams on March 15th, and once to a Laura Sinclair on March 18th. The kitchen went silent, except for the hum of Helena's refrigerator and Denise's suddenly rapid heartbeat. 3 days apart, James leaned closer to his laptop. "You're certain of those dates?" "Positive. Both licenses are right here in the system." Helena, who'd been quietly making coffee, set down her mug with a sharp clink. "He married Laura 3 days after marrying Denise." "But that's impossible," Denise said, even as she was remembering the timeline. The wedding on March 15th. The devastating phone call that same night. Her flight to London on March 16th. How could he marry someone else when he was still married to me? Patricia's voice crackled through the laptop speakers. "Well, technically he couldn't. Under Texas law, a person can't enter into a second marriage while still legally married to someone else. That would be bigamy, a federal felony." James was typing rapidly, pulling up legal databases. "Patricia, was there any divorce decree filed between the March 15th and March 18th marriages?" More typing from Houston. "No divorce filing for either marriage. According to our records, Mr. Matthews is currently married to both women." The legal implications hit Denise like a physical blow. She wasn't divorced. She was still legally married to a man who'd committed a federal crime by marrying someone else. "Patricia, one more question. What would this mean for the validity of both marriages?" The second marriage would be void from the moment it was performed. The first marriage would remain valid unless legally dissolved through divorce proceedings. James closed his laptop with a satisfied click. "Congratulations, Mrs. Matthews. You're still married, and your husband just handed us enough evidence to put him in federal prison." The irony wasn't lost on her. The marriage that had been used to destroy her was now the weapon that would destroy Robert. Carmen Rodriguez arrived an hour later with Maria Santos and a team of federal prosecutors who looked like they'd won the lottery. The kitchen table disappeared under legal documents, laptops, and recording equipment. "This is better than we hoped," Carmen announced, spreading out papers. "Bigamy charges plus money laundering plus fraud. We're looking at potential sentences of 20 to 30 years. Special Agent Sarah Martinez, FBI Financial Crimes Unit, looked across the table at Denise with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Mrs. Matthews, I need you to understand what cooperation with this investigation means. Understand. Your testimony will be crucial in prosecuting not just Robert, but potentially dozens of co-conspirators across multiple countries. You'll be a target for intimidation, possibly physical threats." Maria leaned forward. "She won't be alone. There are at least 6 other women ready to testify." 6 others? Denise stared at Maria. "I thought it was just us." Carmen's been busy. Turns out Robert's been running this scam for almost a decade, using different variations but always the same basic pattern. Marry vulnerable women. Use them to launder money. Discard them when they become inconvenient. Agent Martinez pulled out a thick file. Jennifer Walsh, Maria Santos, Claire Davidson in Phoenix, Amy Chun in Seattle, Rebecca Torres in Miami, and now you. Plus Laura Sinclair, who's been the beneficiary of all these schemes. "Rebecca Torres is dead too," Maria said quietly. "Car accident, just like Jennifer. Both happened right before they were scheduled to meet with investigators." The temperature in the kitchen seemed to drop 10 degrees. Denise looked around the table at the faces of people who were trying to protect her from a man who'd apparently killed to keep his secrets. "Are you saying Robert murdered 2 women?" "We're saying the FBI takes your safety very seriously," Agent Martinez replied diplomatically, "which is why we're prepared to offer you full witness protection if you agree to testify." Witness protection, new identity, new life, complete disconnection from everything and everyone she'd ever known, including Marcus, her son, still with her mother in Atlanta, unaware that his mom had become the star witness in an international criminal investigation. "I need to think about this." James reached for her hand under the table, his touch steady and reassuring. "What exactly would witness protection involve?" "Complete relocation, new identity, ongoing security monitoring until all related prosecutions are complete. Could be several years. Several years away from Marcus. Several years living as someone else in some anonymous town, waiting for justice to work its slow way through the courts." "There's another option," Carmen said carefully. "What option?" "We arrest Robert immediately, before he has time to flee or eliminate evidence. Fast-track the prosecution. Make it too public for him to risk harming witnesses." Agent Martinez frowned. "That's more dangerous for Mrs. Matthews in the short term. But it's faster, and it means she doesn't have to disappear for years." Denise thought about Marcus, about the life she was trying to rebuild, about the woman she'd become since leaving Houston. Strong enough to face Robert in court, brave enough to tell her story publicly, determined enough to see justice done properly. "I don't want witness protection," she said. James squeezed her hand. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I spent my whole life hiding from confrontation, avoiding difficult conversations, letting other people make decisions for me. I'm done hiding." Agent Martinez studied her for a long moment. "Mrs. Matthews, I have to ask, are you prepared for what public testimony means? Media scrutiny, character assassination, death threats." "I'm prepared for whatever it takes to stop Robert from hurting more women." Carmen smiled, and it was fierce. "In that case, let's talk strategy." They worked until midnight, planning testimony, preparing evidence, coordinating with prosecutors in multiple jurisdictions. By the time the federal agents left, Denise felt like she'd crossed some invisible line, from victim to prosecutor, from hunted to hunter. James walked her upstairs to the guest room, both of them exhausted but wired from the evening's revelations. "You know, there's no going back after this," he said, stopping outside her door. "Good. I don't want to go back. Robert will try everything to discredit you. Claim you're lying for money, that you're unstable, that you seduced him into marriage." Denise met his eyes steadily. Let him try. I have something he doesn't have. What's that? The truth. James cupped her face gently, thumb tracing her cheekbone. You're extraordinary. You know that? I'm just tired of letting bad men win. When he kissed her goodnight, it was soft and full of promise. The kiss of a man who'd stand beside her through whatever came next. Not because she needed rescuing, but because she'd chosen him as her partner in seeking justice. Robert's arrest warrant was issued simultaneously in 3 countries. But when they raided his Houston penthouse, they found it empty and security footage of him destroying evidence. The hunt was about to begin. She thought she was safe 3,000 miles away until Robert's shadow appeared outside her London flat. When someone powerful tries to silence you with fear, do you get louder or go underground? What's your survival strategy? What happened next will make you realize that sometimes the most dangerous moment is right before your victory. London's CCTV cameras caught everything except the moment fear crept back into Denise's chest. The realization that Robert's reach extended further than she'd imagined, that 3,000 miles and an ocean weren't enough distance from a desperate man with unlimited resources. The black sedan had been parked across from Helena's townhouse for 3 days. Different drivers, but always the same make and model, always positioned to watch the front door. James noticed it first, his lawyer's paranoia triggered by years of handling dangerous cases. They're not even trying to be subtle, he muttered, closing the curtain after his 3rd check in an hour. Denise looked out from the edge of the window, studying the car and its occupants. 2 men in suits, expensive sunglasses despite London's perpetual gray skies, the kind of professional stillness that suggested they were paid to wait and watch. Private investigators? Probably. But who's paying them is the question. Agent Martinez had warned them this might happen. Robert was panicking, making the kind of desperate moves that either saved criminals or destroyed them completely. The FBI had frozen his known accounts, seized his Houston properties, and issued international arrest warrants. But a man with Laura Sinclair's family money behind him had resources beyond what appeared on any official document. Helena emerged from her study carrying a cup of tea and a grim expression. I just got off the phone with my security consultant. The same men have been asking questions about you at the local shops, showing your photo, claiming to be old friends trying to reconnect. What kind of questions? Your daily routine, where you go, when you leave, who you're with. Helena sat down heavily in her favorite armchair. They know you're here, and they're building a profile of your movements. James pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. Carmen says the same thing is happening in Houston. Men in suits asking questions about your mother, your son Marcus. Cold dread flooded Denise's stomach. They're watching Marcus? Carmen has local police doing drive-bys at your mother's house. Marcus is safe, but Robert's definitely escalating. The phone call came an hour later, just as they were discussing whether to involve Scotland Yard. Helena answered, her face going pale as she listened to whoever was on the other end. That was my neighbor across the street. She says men broke into the flat above mine last night, the one that's been empty for renovation. They've been watching us through the windows. Agent Martinez arrived within 30 minutes, accompanied by 2 other federal agents and a Metropolitan Police detective who looked like he'd seen too many international crime cases. The living room filled with serious faces and official badges, transforming Helena's cozy flat into the headquarters of a criminal investigation. We're moving you, Agent Martinez announced without preamble. Safe house tonight. Moving me where? Classified location. You'll be secure until we can arrest Robert and dismantle his operation. Denise looked around the room at the people who'd become her allies, her team, her chosen family. Helena, who'd opened her home and shared her own quest for justice. James, who'd become her legal advocate and personal anchor. Maria, who'd flown from Costa Rica to coordinate testimony with a stranger she'd met through shared trauma. What about Helena? What about James? We can provide protection for immediate associates, but no. Denise stood up, surprising herself with how firm her voice sounded. I'm not going into hiding. Agent Martinez frowned. Mrs. Matthews, these men aren't just watching you. We have reason to believe they're preparing for more active measures. Active measures meaning what? Kidnapping, intimidation, possibly worse. The room went quiet except for London traffic outside and the steady tick of Helena's antique clock. Everyone waited for Denise to process the information, to accept the logical next step of disappearing until the danger passed. Instead, she walked to the window and looked out at the black sedan, at the men who thought they could frighten her into silence. How long until you arrest Robert? Could be weeks. He's not in any of his known locations. And with Laura's family resources, he could stay hidden indefinitely. So I could spend months in a safe house while Robert destroys evidence and intimidates other witnesses. It's the safest option. Denise turned back to face the room. It's also exactly what he wants. Me hidden away, unable to testify, too scared to go public with what I know. James stepped forward. Denise, this isn't about courage. This is about staying alive. Is it? Because it seems like it's about letting Robert control the situation one more time. Maria, who'd been quiet in the corner, suddenly spoke up. She's right. Running is what they expect, what they're prepared for. Jennifer and Rebecca both went into hiding right before they died. Agent Martinez shot Maria a sharp look. Mrs. Santos, we don't know that hiding led to their deaths. Don't we? Two women, both with evidence against Robert, both killed in accidents right after going into protective custody. Maria stood, moving to stand beside Denise. Maybe it's time to try a different approach. What kind of approach? Denise felt an idea forming, dangerous and audacious, and completely contrary to everything law enforcement would recommend. Public exposure. Instead of hiding from Robert, we make it impossible for him to hide from us. Helena set down her teacup with a sharp clink. What exactly are you proposing? Press conference. Tomorrow morning. Full disclosure of everything we've discovered, all the evidence, all the names. Make Robert's crimes so public that harming me would only confirm everything we're saying. The federal agents exchanged glances that suggested they thought she'd lost her mind. Mrs. Matthews, that would compromise the entire investigation. Would it? Or would it force Robert to surface, to try defending himself, instead of hiding behind private investigators and shell companies? James was staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to stop being prey. Agent Martinez pulled out her phone, presumably to call superiors who would never approve such a plan. But before she could dial, Carmen Rodriguez arrived with news that changed everything. Robert's in London, she announced without preamble. Private jet landed at Heathrow 2 hours ago. The room erupted in controlled chaos. Agents making calls, police coordinating with airport security, everyone mobilizing to track a man who'd just made the fatal mistake of coming to them. Why would he come here? Helena asked. Carmen's smile was sharp as a blade. Because desperate men make stupid decisions. And Robert just made the stupidest decision of his life. Denise walked back to the window, looking out at the black sedan that suddenly seemed less threatening than pathetic. Robert was here, in the same city, breathing the same air. After weeks of feeling hunted, she was about to become the hunter. Agent Martinez, she called without turning around. Yes. I still want that press conference. But now I want it for tomorrow afternoon. Mrs. Matthews, Robert's here because he thinks he can intimidate me in person, the way he intimidated Jennifer and Rebecca. She turned to face the room. Let's show him how wrong he is. The flash drive Marcus was hunting for contained more than just Robert's business secrets. It held evidence of international money laundering. And Robert had just walked into the trap they'd been setting for weeks. What started as marital revenge became an international financial crime investigation, and Denise held the key evidence. If you accidentally uncovered international crimes, would you risk everything to expose them? What's worth that level of danger? What the FBI revealed next will make you realize that some secrets are worth killing for. The American embassy in London felt like stepping back onto U.S. soil, but the conversations happening in soundproof rooms were definitely not typical diplomatic affairs. Federal agents from 3 countries filled the secure conference room, Laptops open, evidence scattered across the table like pieces of a puzzle finally coming together. Agent Martinez stood at the head of the table, addressing the room with the focused energy of someone about to make career-defining arrests. Ladies and gentlemen, what started as a bigamy case has become the largest international money laundering investigation in FBI history. We're looking at $60 million moved through shell companies across 4 countries, with connections to Russian oligarchs, Eastern European crime syndicates, and at least 3 offshore banking networks. Denise sat between James and Carmen, feeling like Alice falling down the rabbit hole. 6 months ago, her biggest worry was paying Marcus's daycare fees. Now she was in the middle of an international crime investigation that apparently involved organized crime. How did it get this big? She asked. Agent Martinez clicked to the next slide, showing a web of connections that looked like a spider web drawn by someone on stimulants. Robert's name appeared in the center, connected to dozens of other names, companies, and countries. Robert Matthews wasn't just laundering money for Laura Sinclair's family. He was laundering money for anyone willing to pay his fees. Russian oil money, Ukrainian political funds, Chinese real estate investments, all of it moving through American women who had no idea what they were signing. Maria leaned forward. How many women total? 43 that we can verify. Possibly more. The number hit Denise like a physical blow. 43 women, all used the way she'd been used, all manipulated into signing documents that made them unwitting accomplices to international crime. Special Agent David Kim from the Treasury Department pulled out a thick file. Mrs. Matthews, the accounts you signed onto weren't just hiding Robert's assets. They were the central hub for a network that's been operating for 8 years. Central hub meaning what? Every transaction flowed through accounts with your name on them. Your signatures authorized the movement of money from Russian energy companies, Ukrainian political parties, Chinese manufacturing syndicates. Congratulations, you're technically one of the biggest money launderers in international law enforcement history. James's hand found hers under the table, but she had no knowledge of what she was signing, which is exactly why her testimony is so valuable, Agent Martinez replied. Denise can testify to Robert's methods of manipulation, his techniques for getting women to sign documents they didn't understand. That testimony, combined with the evidence we've gathered, can bring down the entire network. Carmen opened her laptop, scrolling through legal documents. There's more. Interpol has been tracking the Sinclair family for years, but they could never get close enough to gather evidence. Laura's marriage to Robert gave them access to American banking systems they couldn't penetrate directly. So Laura's not just Robert's accomplice, Denise said slowly. She's the mastermind. Laura Sinclair is one of the most sophisticated financial criminals in the world, Agent Kim confirmed. She's been using her family's legitimate business empire to hide illegal money for decades. Robert was just her latest frontman. The secure conference room felt smaller suddenly, walls pressing in as the scope of what she'd stumbled into became clear. This wasn't about a cheating husband anymore. This was about international crime networks, government investigations, the kind of people who killed witnesses without hesitation. Where's Robert now? She asked. Agent Martinez checked her phone. Holed up in a luxury hotel in Mayfair. MI6 has him under surveillance, but we can't arrest him yet. Why not? Because we want Laura too, and the rest of the network. Robert's just the beginning. Helena, who'd been quiet throughout the briefing, suddenly spoke up. What about Denise's safety? If these people are as dangerous as you're suggesting. We have a plan for that, Agent Martinez said. But it requires Mrs. Matthews to do something that goes against every security protocol we have. Denise felt her pulse quicken. What kind of plan? You're going to meet with Robert, face to face, wearing a wire, while we record everything he says. The room went silent except for the hum of secure communication equipment and Denise's suddenly rapid breathing. You want me to meet with a man who's possibly killed 2 women? We want you to meet with him in a controlled environment, with federal agents positioned throughout the location, while he doesn't know we're listening to every word. James stood abruptly. Absolutely not. That's not protection. That's using her as bait. It's the only way to get Robert on record admitting to the crimes. His lawyers will claim he was manipulated by Laura, that he didn't know what he was doing. But if we can get him talking to Denise, he'll confess to everything, Carmen finished. Men like Robert can't resist explaining how clever they've been, especially to women they think they've outsmarted. Maria nodded slowly. It's true. Robert loves being the smartest person in the room. He'll want to tell Denise exactly how he fooled her. Agent Martinez pulled out what looked like a jewelry box. This is a surveillance device. Looks like a wedding ring. Transmits everything within a 50-foot radius directly to our monitoring station. The irony wasn't lost on Denise. A fake wedding ring to catch the man who'd given her a fake marriage. What exactly would I have to do? Agree to meet with Robert at a location of his choosing. With a device. Keep him talking about his business operations, the other women, anything that incriminates him or Laura. And if he gets suspicious? If he realizes I'm working with federal agents? Agent Martinez and Agent Kim exchanged a look that suggested they'd already discussed this possibility. We'll have agents positioned throughout the location. At the first sign of trouble, we move in. At the first sign of trouble might be too late, James said grimly. Denise stood, walking to the secure room's small window that looked out over London's embassy district. Normal people walking normal lives, unaware that in a soundproof room above their heads, a woman was deciding whether to risk her life to bring down an international crime network. She thought about Marcus, safe with her grandmother in Atlanta, unaware that his mother had become central to one of the biggest criminal investigations in recent history. She thought about Jennifer Walsh and Rebecca Torres, who'd been killed for knowing too much. She thought about the 41 other women who'd been used and discarded by Robert's network. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, desperate, grateful for any attention, willing to sign anything if it meant security for her son. That woman was gone. I'll do it, she said, turning back to face the room. James started to protest, but she held up her hand. I'll do it on one condition. What condition? When this is over, when Robert and Laura and everyone else in their network is in prison, I want protection for every woman who was used in this scheme. New identities if they need them, financial compensation, whatever it takes to rebuild their lives. Agent Martinez smiled. It was genuinely warm. Mrs. Matthews, that was already part of the plan. Carmen opened another file, this one thick with legal documents. Federal Victim Compensation Fund, plus civil asset forfeiture. Every dollar Robert and Laura stole will go back to the women they exploited. The weight of possibility settled on Denise's shoulders. Not just justice for herself, but justice for 43 women who'd been seen as disposable by people with money and power. When do I meet with Robert? Tomorrow night. He's already reached out through intermediaries, claiming he wants to work things out with you privately. James pulled out his phone, checking messages. There's something else. Scotland Yard arrested the men who were watching Helena's flat. They're private military contractors, ex-special forces, paid through a Swiss bank account registered to one of Laura's shell companies. They sent military contractors after me. They sent killers, Maria said bluntly. The same kind of people who probably killed Jennifer and Rebecca. Agent Martinez stood, closing her laptop with a sharp click. Which is exactly why tomorrow night is going to end with Robert Matthews in federal custody, Laura Sinclair in international custody, and their entire network exposed. She looked directly at Denise. Are you ready to finish what you started? Denise thought about the woman who'd fled Houston in a wedding dress, broken and ashamed and convinced she was worthless. That woman had been strong enough to run. This woman was strong enough to fight. I've been ready since the moment I got on that plane to London. The call came at 3 a.m. London time. Robert had been arrested in Monaco, trying to access Laura's family's frozen accounts. Except it wasn't Robert they'd arrested. It was a man using Robert's passport who looked nothing like him. Robert was still out there, still dangerous, and still coming for her. When they arrested Robert in Monaco, Denise thought her nightmare was over, until she realized the real monster was still hunting her. Have you ever felt relief turn to terror in the span of a heartbeat? When the person you thought was captured turns out to be a stranger using stolen identity. The call that came at 3 a.m. London time changed everything Denise thought she knew about safety. Agent Martinez's voice crackled through the secure phone, exhaustion and frustration evident even through the encrypted connection. The man we arrested isn't Robert Matthews. Denise sat up in Helena's guest bed, sleep disappearing instantly. What do you mean? DNA doesn't match. Fingerprints don't match. Height and weight are completely different. Someone's been using Robert's passport and identity for weeks. James stirred beside her, immediately alert at the tension in her voice. Helena appeared in the doorway, bathrobe wrapped tight, face pale with worry. If that wasn't Robert, then where is he? Unknown. But Denise, there's more. The man we arrested? He's a professional assassin. Eastern European, goes by the name Viktor Petrov. He's wanted by Interpol for 6 murders across 3 countries. The bedroom suddenly felt ice cold. James reached for his phone, pulling up news feeds that were already breaking the story. International fugitive arrested in Monaco using fake American passport, he read aloud. No mention of Robert or the money laundering investigation. Agent Martinez continued, her voice tight with urgency. Victor was hired to eliminate someone in London. We found a photograph in his hotel room. Denise's blood turned to ice water. A photograph of who? You. The word hung in the air like poison. Helena moved closer, her protective instincts kicking in. James was already out of bed, pulling on clothes with the efficient movements of someone preparing for battle. Victor was carrying $50,000 cash and a detailed profile of your daily movements. Where you shop, where you walk, when you leave Helena's house. Someone paid a professional killer to study your life. Laura, Denise whispered. We think so, but without Robert in custody, we can't prove the connection. Helena sat on the edge of the bed, reaching for Denise's hand. What does this mean for her safety? It means Robert is still out there, still has access to Laura's money, and he's escalating to lethal force. Victor wasn't planning to intimidate Denise. He was planning to kill her. The magnitude of it settled over the room like a heavy blanket. These weren't just white-collar criminals anymore. They were people who hired assassins, who ordered murders like business transactions. James finished getting dressed and turned to face her. We're calling off the meeting with Robert. It's too dangerous now. Actually, Agent Martinez said, we think the meeting is more important than ever. Are you insane? James's voice rose. They just hired a professional killer, who's now in custody, and whose arrest has probably panicked Robert into making desperate moves. If we can get him to that meeting, he might reveal information about other assassins, other threats. Denise stood, walking to the window. The street below looked normal. Early morning London, people heading to work, completely unaware that a woman in a townhouse above their heads had a price on her head. There's something else, Agent Martinez continued. Victor had burner phones with text messages from someone using Robert's usual communication patterns. The last message was sent 2 hours ago. What did it say? Target acquired. Proceeding as planned. Silence filled the room as the implications sank in. Victor had been in contact with Robert as recently as 2 hours ago, which meant Robert knew his assassin had been arrested, which meant he was probably already adapting his plans. James pulled up security camera feeds on his laptop, checking the street view around Helena's neighborhood. No suspicious vehicles this morning, but that doesn't mean anything. Helena stood, pacing to the fireplace with the nervous energy of someone who'd spent decades protecting other people's secrets. I have a suggestion. What kind of suggestion? I have a country house in Wales. Remote, private, excellent security system. We could relocate there while law enforcement tracks down Robert. That's running, Denise said quietly. That's surviving, Helena replied. Agent Martinez's voice cut through their debate. Mrs. Matthews, I need to be clear about something. We believe Robert has hired multiple contractors, not just Victor. Moving locations might not be enough. The words hit like cold water. Multiple assassins, people trained to kill, paid to eliminate her, hunting her across international borders. How many people are trying to kill me? She asked. We don't know. But Victor's phone contained contact information for at least 3 other individuals with similar backgrounds. Denise looked around the room at the people who'd become her chosen family. Helena, who'd opened her home and shared her quest for justice. James, who transformed from lawyer to protector to partner. All of them now in danger because of her decision to fight back against Robert's crimes. "I won't let you all become targets because of me," she said. "You don't get to make that choice for us," Helena replied firmly. "We're in this together." James closed his laptop with a sharp snap. "Agent Martinez, what's the FBI's plan for protecting all of us?" "Full security detail, safe house relocation, ongoing monitoring until we can neutralize the threat." "And how long could that take?" "Weeks, possibly months." Denise thought about Marcus, still in Atlanta with her mother, unaware that his mom was being hunted by international criminals. How long before they targeted her family too? How many people would be destroyed by her decision to seek justice? "There has to be another way," she said. "What are you thinking?" James asked. "What if we don't wait for Robert to come to us? What if we force him out of hiding?" Agent Martinez's voice sharpened with interest. "What do you mean?" "Press conference. Today. Public exposure of everything we know about Robert, Laura, the money laundering network, the hired killers. Make it so public that hiding becomes impossible. That would put you at even greater risk. Would it? Right now, Robert has the advantage. He's hidden. I'm exposed. He's setting the terms of engagement. But if I go public with everything..." James was nodding slowly, understanding her logic. Public exposure becomes protection. Too many witnesses, too much media attention for quiet elimination. Helena moved to her desk, pulling out business cards. "I know people at the BBC, The Guardian, The Times. We could have press conferences scheduled within hours." "Mrs. Matthews," Agent Martinez said carefully, "going public would compromise the ongoing investigation. We need time to build cases against the other members of the network." "How much time?" "Because while you're building cases, Robert's hiring more killers." The secure phone line crackled with silence as Agent Martinez presumably consulted with superiors. When she returned, her voice carried new determination. "All right, but if we're doing this, we're doing it right. Joint press conference with FBI, Scotland Yard, and Interpol. Full disclosure of the international scope. Multiple arrests announced simultaneously." "When?" "This afternoon, 4 p.m. London time." Denise felt something shift in her chest. Not fear anymore, but anticipation. She was done being prey. Done hiding. Done reacting to Robert's moves instead of making her own. "Agent Martinez?" "Yes." "When Robert sees that press conference, when he realizes I've exposed everything, he's going to panic." "Probably. Panicked men make mistakes. That's what we're counting on." As the call ended and they began planning the most dangerous day of her life, Denise realized she wasn't scared anymore. She was hungry for the confrontation that would finally end Robert's reign of terror. But first, she needed to call her mother in Atlanta. Because if she was about to become the most wanted woman in international criminal investigation, Marcus deserved to know his mom was fighting for justice, not just running from danger. The press conference would change everything. But the call she received 30 minutes before going live would shatter her world completely. She stood before international media to expose Robert's crimes, then discovered he'd been watching her every move from the audience. When you're about to reveal someone's deepest secrets to the world, do you expect them to show up? Have you ever looked into a crowd and seen your worst nightmare staring back? What happened during that press conference will haunt you, because some confrontations happen exactly when you least expect them. The BBC conference room buzzed with international media, cameras positioned at every angle, journalists from 12 countries waiting to hear the story that would dominate headlines for weeks. Denise sat at the long table between Agent Martinez and Scotland Yard Detective Inspector Sarah Collins, facing more attention than she'd ever imagined possible. The morning had been a whirlwind of preparation. Legal briefings, security sweeps, coordination between law enforcement agencies across 3 continents. James sat in the front row, steady presence in a room full of strangers. Helena had positioned herself near the back, watching exits with the trained paranoia of someone who'd spent decades protecting dangerous secrets. "Ladies and gentlemen," Agent Martinez began, addressing the crowd of reporters. Today we're announcing the largest international money laundering investigation in FBI history. Over the past 6 months, our joint task force has uncovered a network that moved more than $60 million through shell companies across 4 countries. Camera flashes erupted like lightning. Reporters scribbled notes, typed on laptops, adjusted recording equipment. The energy in the room was electric, feeding on the promise of scandal and international crime. The network used vulnerable American women as unwitting accomplices, Detective Inspector Collins continued. These women were manipulated into signing documents they didn't understand, making them legally responsible for transactions they never authorized. Agent Martinez gestured toward Denise. Mrs. Denise Matthews is here today to share her experience as both a victim and a key witness in this ongoing investigation. Denise leaned toward the microphone, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. 6 months ago, I thought I was marrying the man of my dreams. Instead, I became an unwitting front for international criminal activity. The room fell silent except for the soft click of camera shutters. Every eye focused on her, waiting for details that would transform her personal nightmare into front-page news. Robert Matthews married me under false pretenses while still legally married to another woman. He manipulated me into signing financial documents that I later discovered were used to launder money for Russian oligarchs, Ukrainian political figures, and Eastern European crime syndicates. A reporter in the third row raised her hand. Mrs. Matthews, how many other women were victimized in this scheme? 43 that we've identified. Possibly more. Another voice from the crowd. What happened to the other wives? Denise's chest tightened. 2 of them are dead. Jennifer Walsh and Rebecca Torres, both killed in suspicious accidents right before they were scheduled to meet with federal investigators. The room erupted in questions, voices overlapping as reporters sensed the story expanding beyond financial crime into murder conspiracy. Agent Martinez held up her hand for silence. We're treating both deaths as homicides connected to this investigation. We've also arrested a professional assassin hired to eliminate Mrs. Matthews. More chaos, more questions, the energy building towards something that felt dangerous in its intensity. Through the commotion, Denise scanned the room, looking for familiar faces, checking exits, maintaining the situational awareness that had kept her alive for weeks. That's when she saw him. Back row, left side, partially obscured by a BBC camera operator. Same dark hair, same expensive suit, same cold eyes that had watched her sign documents she didn't understand. Robert Matthews, sitting in plain sight, watching her expose his crimes to international media. Her blood turned to ice water. How was he here? How had he gotten past security, past federal agents, past the most comprehensive manhunt in recent memory? She tried to catch Agent Martinez's attention without being obvious, but the agent was fielding questions about international cooperation and asset forfeiture. Detective Inspector Collins was explaining extradition procedures. No one else had noticed the man who'd orchestrated the crimes they were discussing. Robert's eyes met hers across the crowded room. He smiled, the same charming expression she'd fallen for months ago, and raised his hand as if asking a question. Panic flooded her system, but she forced herself to remain calm. This was a room full of law enforcement officers and international media. Robert couldn't do anything violent without being captured immediately. Could he? Agent Martinez called on him. Question from a gentleman in the back row. Robert stood, his voice carrying clearly across the room. Mrs. Matthews, don't you think you're being unfair to your husband? Marriage is about working through problems together, not running to the media when things get difficult. The room went silent. Reporters sensed something happening, but didn't understand what. Agent Martinez frowned, clearly not recognizing Robert, but sensing something wrong in his question. Denise leaned closer to her microphone. I think my husband made his priorities clear when he hired professional killers to eliminate me. Alleged killers, Robert replied smoothly. An alleged husband. After all, if our marriage was fraudulent as you claim, then technically we were never married at all. The bastard was trying to discredit her testimony in real time, using legal technicalities to undermine everything she'd just revealed. But he'd also just admitted to being her husband in front of international media and federal agents. Detective Inspector Collins was already reaching for her radio, subtly calling for backup. Agent Martinez had recognized Robert now, her hand moving toward her weapon with practiced calm. "You're right," Denise said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "We were never really married. Because you can't legally marry someone when you're already married to someone else." Robert's smile faltered slightly. He'd expected her to be intimidated, to back down under pressure. Instead, she was using his public appearance to force admissions he couldn't take back. "Ladies and gentlemen," she continued, addressing the room of reporters, "the man asking questions from the back row is Robert Matthews, the subject of this international investigation. The man who's been hiding from law enforcement for weeks." Chaos erupted. Cameras swung toward Robert. Reporters shouted questions. Security moved through the crowd. But Robert remained calm, almost amused by the attention. "Mrs. Matthews," he called over the commotion, "you always were too trusting. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingency plans?" That's when Denise noticed the other men in the room. 3 of them, positioned at different exits, all wearing the same type of earpiece, all moving with military precision toward the exits. Not reporters, not security, professional contractors like Victor. Agent Martinez was speaking urgently into her radio now, but the room was too crowded, too chaotic for organized response. Robert had planned this perfectly. Public confrontation that would become private elimination in the confusion of media frenzy. James stood from the front row, moving toward her with protective instincts, but one of Robert's men intercepted him. Helena was already at the back exit, but another contractor blocked her path. "The beautiful thing about press conferences," Robert continued, his voice carrying over the chaos, "is how many tragic accidents can happen when panicked crowds try to evacuate." He was right. In the confusion of people trying to leave, pushing toward exits, following the crush of bodies, it would be easy for specific individuals to suffer fatal injuries. Easy to eliminate witnesses while making it look like crowd-related accidents. Denise stood from the table, microphone still live, her voice broadcast to news stations across the world. "Robert Matthews is threatening to kill me and everyone in this room. This is being broadcast live to international media. If anything happens to me or these reporters, Robert Matthews and Laura Sinclair are responsible." Smart move. Make the threats public, create so many witnesses that elimination becomes impossible. Except Robert was smiling like he'd expected exactly this response. "Actually," he said, pulling something from his jacket, "I think we're past the point of worrying about witnesses." The device in his hand looked like a phone, but felt like something much more dangerous. The men at the exits were backing away from the doors, moving toward interior walls with the practiced efficiency of people who knew what was coming. "You see, Denise, you made one crucial mistake. You assumed I needed to keep you alive." Agent Martinez was shouting into her radio now, calling for immediate backup, bomb squad, evacuation protocols. But the exits were blocked, the room was packed, and Robert held something that could kill everyone present. "What you never understood," Robert continued, "is that dead martyrs are much more powerful than living witnesses. Your testimony dies with you, but your tragic death creates sympathy for the grieving widower who's clearly being persecuted by overzealous federal agents." The magnitude of his plan became clear. Kill her publicly, along with federal agents and international media, then position himself as the victim of law enforcement overreach. Use the tragedy to discredit the entire investigation while eliminating everyone who could testify against him. Brilliant, psychotic, and about to succeed. Unless Denise could think of something he hadn't planned for. The fire alarm she triggered brought armed response teams that Robert hadn't expected, but also provided the chaos he needed to escape. London became a battlefield as international law enforcement hunted the man who'd turned a press conference into a crime scene. When someone threatens to kill you in front of the world's media, how long before they become everyone's problem? Have you ever seen an entire city mobilize to catch one person? What happened next will show you how quickly civilized society can transform into organized warfare. The BBC building evacuation looked like organized chaos from the outside. Hundreds of people streaming through exits, emergency vehicles surrounding the block, armed police establishing perimeters. But from inside the secure command center that had been hastily established in a nearby building, it looked like military strategy. Denise sat at a table covered with monitors, radio equipment, and street maps of central London, surrounded by more law enforcement than she'd ever seen in one place. FBI, Scotland Yard, Metropolitan Police, MI5, Interpol, all coordinating the largest manhunt in London's recent history. He's got at least 6 men with him, reported Detective Inspector Collins, studying footage from security cameras throughout the BBC building. Professional contractors, probably ex-military, definitely armed. Agent Martinez was coordinating with tactical teams positioned throughout the city. We've got eyes on vehicles leaving the area, but Robert could be in any of them, or none of them. James sat beside Denise, his protective presence steady despite the adrenaline coursing through the room. Helena paced near the windows, her usual calm replaced by the focused energy of someone who'd spent decades in dangerous situations. What exactly happened with that device? Denise asked, still trying to process the terror of the past hour. Fake, Agent Martinez replied. Looked like a detonator, but forensics says it was just a modified phone designed to cause panic. So, he wasn't actually planning to blow up the room? No, he was planning to use the panic to eliminate specific targets in the confusion. You, primarily, but also key witnesses and federal agents. Detective Inspector Collins pulled up building schematics on her laptop. The fire alarm disrupted his timeline, forced his team to adapt faster than they'd planned. That's probably what saved everyone's lives. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same impulsive decision-making that Robert had always criticized her for. Acting without thinking, reacting emotionally instead of strategically, had probably prevented a massacre. Where is he now? She asked. Unknown, but we've got the entire city locked down. Every airport, train station, and major road is being monitored. He can't leave London without us knowing. A radio crackled with reports from tactical teams throughout the city. Suspect vehicle spotted near Hyde Park. Checking reports of armed men in Canary Wharf. Possible sighting in Camden Market. Robert had turned London into his hunting ground, and they were playing by his rules. James pulled out his phone, scrolling through news feeds. The stories everywhere. CNN, BBC World Service, Sky News. International criminal threatens mass murder during live press conference. Good, Agent Martinez said grimly. Public pressure will make it harder for him to operate. Will it? Helena asked from her position by the window. Or will it make him more desperate? Before anyone could answer, Agent Martinez's radio burst with urgent chatter. All units, all units. Shots fired in Westminster. Repeat, shots fired near Parliament. The command center erupted in controlled activity. Officers coordinating with tactical teams, analysts pulling up street maps, communications specialists patching through to on-scene commanders. Is it Robert? Denise asked. Unknown. Could be his team, creating diversions while he escapes. Could be unrelated criminal activity. Could be him making his stand. Detective Inspector Collins was already gathering equipment. I'm heading to Westminster. Keep Mrs. Matthews secure until we know what we're dealing with. I want to go with you, Denise said. Absolutely not, James replied immediately. You stay here where it's safe. Safe. She gestured toward the chaos around them. Robert just threatened to kill me in front of international media. Nowhere is safe until he's in custody. Agent Martinez looked up from her communications equipment. She's right. And honestly, Robert's obsessed with her. If he's making his final play, he'll want her there to witness it. You want to use her as bait again? James's voice carried barely controlled anger. I want to end this before more people die. Robert's escalating, becoming more desperate, more willing to take risks. That makes him dangerous, but also makes him predictable. Helena moved away from the window, her expression thoughtful. What if we gave him what he wants? What do you mean? Roberts always needed to be the smartest person in the room. His entire criminal operation was built on being cleverer than his victims, law enforcement, even his partners. What if we let him think he's outsmarted us one more time? Agent Martinez was listening with the focused attention of someone recognizing a potentially brilliant strategy. What are you proposing? Controlled confrontation. Let Robert think he's maneuvered Denise into a trap, but actually have it be our trap. Full tactical support, complete surveillance, overwhelming force positioned to respond instantly. That's incredibly dangerous, James said. Everything about this situation is incredibly dangerous, Helena replied. The question is whether we want to let Robert choose the terms of the final confrontation or whether we want to choose them ourselves. Denise looked around the command center at the dozens of law enforcement officers coordinating one of the largest manhunts in British history, all because of her decision to fight back against a man who'd seen her as disposable. What would the plan be? She asked. Agent Martinez pulled up a map of central London on her laptop. We know Robert's goal is eliminating you while positioning himself as the victim. So we give him an opportunity that looks perfect from his perspective, but is actually completely controlled from ours. What kind of opportunity? Public location, lots of witnesses, media coverage. Somewhere he can make grand gestures and recorded statements before trying to kill you. Detective Inspector Collins was nodding slowly, understanding the strategy. Somewhere with multiple tactical positions for our teams, clear sight lines, controlled access points. Where are you thinking? Agent Martinez zoomed in on a specific location. Westminster Bridge. Open space, surrounded by government buildings, symbolic location for his final statement about being persecuted by law enforcement. Denise stared at the map, imagining herself standing on that bridge while Robert approached with whatever final play he'd planned. Every instinct screamed that it was suicidal. Every logical thought agreed with her instincts. But every other woman Robert had targeted was either dead or in hiding. Jennifer Walsh, Rebecca Torres, 41 other women who'd been used and discarded. Someone had to stand up to him publicly, definitively, with enough witnesses and firepower to ensure he couldn't hurt anyone else. How many tactical officers? She asked. 50 minimum. Snipers on surrounding buildings, undercover agents throughout the crowd, full surveillance and communication support. And if something goes wrong, we have contingencies for every scenario we can imagine. What about the scenarios you can't imagine? Agent Martinez met her eyes steadily. That's the risk of dealing with someone as unpredictable as Robert. But the alternative is letting him stay hidden while he plans more attacks on you, other witnesses, anyone who threatens his operation. James reached for her hand under the table. You don't have to do this. We can keep you in protective custody until he's caught through traditional methods. How long could that take? Months, maybe years. Denise thought about Marcus, growing up while his mother lived in hiding. About the other women in Robert's network, still looking over their shoulders, waiting for justice that might never come. About Jennifer Walsh and Rebecca Torres, whose deaths would be meaningless if Robert escaped consequences. When? She asked. Tomorrow morning. Rush hour, maximum witnesses, optimal tactical positioning. Helena moved closer, her voice gentle but determined. Are you certain about this? Denise looked around the command center one more time, at the evidence of an international investigation that had grown far beyond her personal quest for justice. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every woman who'd been seen as disposable by powerful men. I've never been more certain of anything. The trap was set for Westminster Bridge at dawn, but Robert had been planning his own trap for weeks, and his was already in motion. She walked onto that bridge, believing she held all the cards, until she discovered Robert had been playing a different game entirely. When you think you're hunting someone, but they've been hunting you longer, who really has the advantage? Have you ever walked into a trap you helped design? What happened at Westminster Bridge will change how you think about justice, revenge, and the price of standing up to dangerous people. Dawn over the Thames painted Westminster Bridge in shades of gold and gray, the river flowing beneath like liquid history carrying the weight of centuries. London was waking up around them. Early commuters, tourists with cameras, the eternal rhythm of a city that had seen everything and survived it all. Denise stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by what looked like organized chaos, but was actually the most coordinated law enforcement operation in recent British history. 50 tactical officers positioned throughout the area, all invisible to casual observers, but ready to respond within seconds. Agent Martinez's voice crackled through her nearly invisible earpiece. All units in position. We have eyes on every approach, snipers on 6 buildings, undercover officers throughout the crowd. James stood 30 feet away, disguised as a morning jogger, but close enough to reach her quickly if needed. Helena was positioned near Parliament, officially representing media interests, but actually coordinating with MI5 agents who'd taken personal interest in the operation. Any sign of Robert? Denise asked quietly. Negative, but that doesn't mean he's not here. Detective Inspector Collins's voice joined the communication channel. Remember, Mrs. Matthews, our goal is getting Robert to incriminate himself on record while maintaining your safety. Don't take unnecessary risks for better evidence. Easy advice to give. Harder to follow when facing someone who'd already demonstrated willingness to kill witnesses. The morning crowd was building. Commuters crossing the bridge, tourists taking photos of Big Ben, street performers setting up for the day. Normal London life, providing cover for what might become a very abnormal confrontation. That's when she saw him. Not Robert, but one of his men from the BBC building, moving through the crowd with predatory purpose, heading directly toward her position. Contact, she whispered into her microphone. One of Robert's contractors approaching from the south. Copy that. We see him. Maintain position, let him approach. The man stopped 10 feet away, professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Matthews? Mr. Matthews would like to speak with you privately. Tell Mr. Matthews he can speak to me right here, in front of all these witnesses. I'm afraid he insists on privacy. For your own safety. The irony of a hired killer expressing concern for her safety wasn't lost on her. And if I refuse? The man's smile widened, becoming genuinely unpleasant. I don't think you'll refuse. He gestured toward the crowd, and Denise's blood turned cold as she realized what she was seeing. 3 more men, positioned throughout the morning commuters, all wearing the same type of earpiece, all watching her with professional interest. But it was worse than that. As her eyes adjusted to what she was looking for, she started recognizing other faces. The tourist taking photos near Parliament, one of Robert's contractors. The street performer near the bridge entrance, another contractor. The jogger who'd passed James twice, definitely not a coincidental runner. Agent Martinez, she whispered, how many of Robert's people do you count? We're reassessing now. More than we initially identified. How many more? Silence on the communication channel that lasted too long to be comforting. The contractor stepped closer, his voice carrying a subtle threat. Mrs. Matthews, Mr. Matthews has surrounded this bridge with more firepower than your law enforcement friends anticipated. You can come with me quietly, or things can become unpleasant for everyone present. She looked around the bridge, seeing the morning crowd with new eyes. How many of these normal-looking people were actually armed professionals? How many innocent bystanders were about to become casualties in Robert's final play? Where does he want to meet? Somewhere more private, away from all these cameras and law enforcement officers. Agent Martinez's voice in her earpiece was tight with urgency. Do not leave the bridge. We can protect you here, but if you go with him to a secondary location. The contractor seemed to sense her hesitation. Mrs. Matthews, you have 30 seconds to decide. After that, Mr. Matthews begins demonstrating what happens when people don't cooperate with his reasonable requests. As if summoned by his words, one of the disguised contractors near the bridge entrance casually bumped into a morning commuter. The commuter stumbled, grabbed his chest, and collapsed onto the sidewalk. Heart attack? Or something that looked like a heart attack, but wasn't. 20 seconds, Mrs. Matthews. Panic flooded through her system, but also clarity. Robert had planned this perfectly. Surrounded the bridge with his people, threatened innocent bystanders, forced her to choose between her own safety and civilian casualties. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He thought she was still the same desperate woman who'd signed documents without reading them, who'd accepted whatever scraps of attention he offered. "Agent Martinez," she said quietly, "are you recording everything happening right now? Full audio and video surveillance, yes. Including this man threatening to kill innocent people if I don't cooperate?" Every word. She looked directly at the contractor, her voice carrying clearly across the bridge. "Tell Robert Matthews that if he wants to talk to me, he can do it right here in front of all these witnesses and cameras. If he's innocent of the crimes I've accused him of, he should have no problem defending himself publicly." The contractor's professional calm cracked slightly. "Mrs. Matthews, you're making a serious mistake. The only mistake I made was marrying your boss in the first place." That's when the chaos started. Not the controlled confrontation law enforcement had planned, but something much more dangerous. Gunshots from multiple directions, civilians screaming and running, tactical teams responding to threats they hadn't anticipated. Through the confusion, she saw Robert himself emerging from the crowd near Parliament, not hiding anymore, walking toward her with the confident stride of someone who'd just sprung a trap years in the making. "Denise," he called over the chaos, his voice carrying that same charm she'd fallen for months ago. "We need to finish our conversation." Agent Martinez was shouting orders through her earpiece. Tactical teams were engaging multiple targets, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear sirens approaching. But all of that felt secondary to the man walking toward her with murder in his eyes. "You always underestimated me," Robert said, stopping just out of reach. "Even now, you think this is about money or crime or justice. What is it about? It's about control. It's about showing you what happens when someone tries to destroy me." That's when she realized the real scope of Robert's plan. This wasn't just about eliminating her testimony. This was about demonstrating his power, showing the world that Robert Matthews could turn central London into a battlefield whenever he chose. And he was succeeding. But as tactical teams established control and the immediate threats were neutralized, Robert made his final mistake. He got close enough for Denise to see something he'd been hiding: the wire he was wearing. The recording equipment that meant he'd been documenting everything, planning to use her words against her. Except now, it would record his confession instead. The shootout on Westminster Bridge lasted 4 minutes and changed international law enforcement forever. But the confession Robert made while sirens surrounded them was what sent him to prison. 2 years later, she stood in a federal courthouse watching Robert Matthews receive 5 consecutive life sentences and realized her nightmare had finally transformed into someone else's cautionary tale. When the jury foreman reads guilty on 47 counts of international fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and racketeering, how does justice actually feel? Is it the satisfaction you imagined, or something more complicated? What Denise discovered about revenge and healing will surprise you. The federal courthouse in Houston felt like returning to a different lifetime. 2 years had passed since Westminster Bridge, since the shootout that ended Robert's criminal empire, since the international investigation that had dominated headlines for months. But walking up those courthouse steps for sentencing, Denise felt like she was closing the final chapter of someone else's story. James walked beside her, no longer just her lawyer, but her partner in every sense that mattered. They'd weathered international media attention, death threats from Robert's remaining associates, and a complex process of building new lives while testifying in criminal cases across 3 countries. Marcus, now 5 years old, waited with Helena in the courthouse lobby, too young to understand the significance of the day, but old enough to know his mother had fought very hard to keep him safe. He'd spent the past 2 years calling Helena Nana and treating James like the father he'd never had, building the kind of family Denise had dreamed of before Robert entered their lives. "How are you feeling?" James asked as they approached the courtroom doors.